You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Harry's wife, 25%. What does this 25% appertain to? Is it perhaps the percentage of sugars that can string a sentence together? No, it's far too high. Perhaps it's the number of people that think Harry's wife is a decent human being. No, again, it's far too high a number for it to be that. Maybe it is the amount of times that Harry has been granted some spicy poontang in the course of nearly the half the year that has elapsed already. That's possible. No, what this actually appertains to is money. Yes, that favourite residual benefit of Harry's wife. On the Reddit thread, St. Harry's wife, but as you know, they use her full name, I do not, somebody called Aware Impression 8527 has stated that they have heard from a friend at Spotify that the Sussexes will only get to keep $5 million of the $20 million deal, i.e. 25%. Now, you can make of that what you will in terms of whether you believe that that is correct. We do know that they're not going to get the full fee, but is it as low as $5 million? Perhaps it is. Of course, bearing in mind the level of expenditure that Harry's wife has, and the security costs, for instance, that they incur, they will have already burned through that money. If you take into account what they would be left with after tax, they've already overspent on that element. Obviously, having to dig into the money that Harry had, or the money that he's got from Penguin Random House, or some of the money that she had. But perhaps those funds have already been burnt up already, their existing savings gone by the by in the last few years. This puts them in a difficult position. There are no new deals on the horizon. Why? People have become sick of them. This is the collateral consequence of Harry's wife's narcissism and the short-termism by which she functions and operates. Everything is hunky-dory right now, in this particular moment, as she signs up to the deals, without actually thinking about how she might rein her expenditure in, whether they'll be able to deliver on the deals, whether there'll be any deals after that. In fact, if someone were to make mention of the fact, she would say, well, they'll always want to deal with me. I'm the brilliant Harry's wife, and therefore she will always believe that there will be further money coming to her. Yet this is a small chunk compared to what they ought to have received, and the fact that she's not getting any more of it will have caused wounding for her. Remember, she has a rampant sense of entitlement and believes that the whole $20 million ought to have been paid to her for doing very little. Indeed, the delusion of her narcissism will have told her that the Archetype series was worth $20 million of itself. She will have bellyached about this payment. It would not surprise me to find if she had spent yet more money consulting lawyers to determine whether she could get more out of them. But I suspect the way that the contract is set up, that Spotify are well within their rights to only pay them $5 million. I suspect they probably might have even been a little bit generous in that. They will be delighted to have saved $15 million, although certain people will question the spunking of $5 million on the dross that was Archetypes. But nevertheless, that is a lot of money to pay for a podcast that was both boring, uninteresting, and, although initially it was listened to by many people, as we know, most of the individuals that listened to it, to that series, did so as part of a grudge listen. This is a huge problem for Harry's wife. No new deals on the horizon, as I mentioned, and the fact that things aren't looking too clever with Netflix either. She has managed to grift this money out of Spotify. If you think about what she's actually done work-wise, She's been hugely overpaid, both in terms of what it actually amounted to and the effort that she put in. For instance, a lot of the legwork has been undertaken by producers. She only popped in for certain interviews, and with others, she recorded the questions which were then edited in afterwards. Also, as other individuals at Spotify have commented, both she and Harry seem surprised by the amount of work that's required. This gives you a very good glimpse at the two of them in terms of their mentality. Harry's never really had to learn to work. He's always been propped up, and therefore he's always experienced privilege in that way. Harry's wife just thinks it should come to her by virtue of her narcissism. And also, if you analyse her history, she's always been able to lay her hands on things more readily than by actually having to put the work in. For instance, with regard to her education, her father paid for it. When it came to her getting parts, her father, already in the industry, assisted in that regard. Yes, she bleated about the various auditions that didn't go her way, but she also received various opportunities courtesy of an advantage that many other people would not have. She then married Trevor Engelson, husband number 1 or number 2, depending on who you ask, and his connections meant that it afforded her more roles. She, again, pounced off a man. And then with Harry, this enabled her such access. She hasn't put in years and years of treading the boards. Notably, as far as I'm aware, she's never appeared on stage, probably because she wouldn't remember her lines and because she's not a particularly good actress, and therefore was only suited to generally small television parts, and fluked her way into a more substantial part with Suits, although, of course, she makes it out to be a blockbuster when it never was. She, through her sense of entitlement, has never been one that has had to work at something. She'll claim she has, because her narcissism will make it seem like she's industrious. But remember, she's guided by her narcissism, and for her, as a middle mid-ranger, it wants the maximum return on very little input. Some narcissists are hugely industrious as a consequence of that real desire to succeed, to be the best. Harry's wife, like other narcissists, wants an easy ride. She wants money for nothing. She just wants to be able to turn up, swan around, have people praise her, put in a minimum of effort, and be paid a huge amount of money. And she's now had a rude awakening. Of course, this is not going to motivate her to get her shit together and to work hard. She's not going to change in that respect. Instead, all she will do is bellyache and moan about the 5 million that she has received, which, of course, when you take into account the associated costs of the other people in the production and the payment of tax, etc., if that's applicable, she's going to end up with not so much out of it, certainly not even the full 5 million, thus leading her to feel a further threat to control, which she will complain about. She will regard this as unfair, that she should have received the full amount. It is also demonstrating that they are in something of a parlous financial situation, and makes it all the more interesting to see how she will try and prostitute herself in the future. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.